at the edge of a frozen world. Among snow, forest, and deadly silence, a man is thrown to the ground by fate, ripped apart by betrayal, and left to die by his own comrades. This is the story of a man who defied death, defied nature, and defied other men. Inspired by the true story of Hugh Glass, he survived with a shattered body, broken bones, and a soul burning for one thing: revenge. The forest is quiet, too quiet. Dawn breaks gently over the cold American wilderness of 1823. A group of fur trappers, led by Captain Andrew Henry, moves carefully through the thick woods. Their eyes scan for danger, but their hands are busy skinning elk, stacking precious pelts, and preparing to haul their catch downriver. Among them is Hugh Glass, a man of few words, hardened by years of survival and loss. He crouches in the woods, moving silently like a ghost, alongside his half-Pawnee son, Hawk. Suddenly, a sharp whistling sound cuts through the air. Arrows. Fast, silent, and deadly. The first man drops without a sound. Then another. Screams erupt. Chaos unfolds. The attackers, Arikara warriors, swift and merciless, descend on the camp from all sides. Panic spreads. The men scramble to defend themselves. Rifles fire, muskets misfire. Some don't even get the chance to load. Pelts are abandoned. Horses break loose.
Come on!
The river flows fast, cold, muddy, and unpredictable. For the survivors, it seems like the only escape from the Arikara ambush. Hugh Glass speaks up. Glass knows this land like the scars on his hands. He proposes a dangerous but smarter choice. Abandon the boat. Travel on foot through the woods. But John Fitzgerald pushes back. You want us to drag pelts uphill in the snow? We can get to the fort faster by water. Two men, two instincts. Survival versus fear. Captain Henry makes the call. He sides with Glass. The boat is burned and left behind. The men march into the frozen woods, carrying wounds and distrust. And in those dark trees, death waits patiently.
We can haul them all the way back to the fort. Not the way we're
God living, the only way I get to do that.
Hawk, Glass's son, watches the argument quietly. He knows the real threat isn't just hiding in the trees. The danger didn't just come from outside. It came from within their own group as well. Hawk's mother was killed and massacred by white people when he was a child, and he was cared for by his father, Glass. Glass really loves his son, even though many white people hate him because he is a descendant. As morning approached, they continued their journey, quickly changing locations and covering their tracks. Their destination was a special American base camp under Captain Henry's company. In the middle of the rest, the air is still. Glass steps slowly across damp leaves, breaking away from the group to scout ahead. Then, a subtle noise from the brush. Not a man, not a deer. A mother grizzly bear. The forest explodes with chaos. Her claws rip into Glass's flesh. He's slammed to the ground, dragged and mauled. Teeth sink into his neck. Bones crack under her weight. But somehow, he's still alive. The The second attack is even worse. She drags him like prey. With what strength he has left, Glass pulls his knife, slashes wildly, and stabs her again and again until she finally collapses, lifeless, on top of him. Not long after the attack, two men hear a faint noise in the distance. They find Hugh Glass, barely alive, torn open, his breath a whisper. What they see is no longer a man, but what's left of one. But Captain Henry refuses to leave him. Glass is their guide. And more than that, Henry still sees life in his eyes. They build a stretcher, step by step, dragging Glass through the snow. Slow, painful, heavy. Day after day passes. The cold deepens, supplies shrink. Glass can barely speak, but he refuses to die. On one freezing moment, the crew started to protest. Henry makes a hard choice. He offers payment to anyone willing to stay behind, to care for Glass until he passes. Fitzgerald volunteers. For money, he'd do anything. Even though Captain Henry was a little doubtful, he reminded with emphasis, Glass must be buried properly. Then there was Bridger, young and kind, stays as well. And Hawk, Glass's own son, refuses to leave his father's side. So begins the silent nights in the forest. 3 men, and one body barely clinging to life. But to Fitzgerald, Glass isn't a man anymore, just a burden. And behind that stare, a darker thought begins to form.
I'm fond of you.
Days pass. Glass grows weaker. His wounds rot. His breath turns shallow, and the cold only deepens. Fitzgerald starts to lose patience. Then comes the darkest moment. With a heart gone cold, Fitzgerald tried to kill Glass. However, a moment later, Hawk tried to stop Fitzgerald. Unfortunately, it was Hawk who was stabbed by Fitzgerald. Glass's own son silenced and murdered, all for trying to protect his father. Glass can't move. He can only watch, as his world dies right in front of him. When Bridger returned from the hunt and brought water, he quietly lies to Bridger, claiming the Arikara are close. They must leave now. Fitzgerald then pushed Glass into a shallow grave. Bridger was forced to leave Glass and his drinking place. The snow falls slow. The wind cuts deep, and from a shallow grave Glass opens his eyes. He's not dead. Half frozen, bleeding, barely alive, he drags himself out from the dirt. Every movement is agony, but his will is stronger than the pain. He crawled over to the body of his son, Hawk, who lay stiff. Glass loved him so much, he regretted not being able to do anything. Using branches as crutches, crawling through frozen ground, Glass begins to move. No food, no weapon. Only one thing keeps him going: revenge. Glass kept crawling. He kept trying to survive. His footsteps were noticed by the Arikara tribe. The Arikara tribe hunted down a colony of white people who had kidnapped their chief's daughter. They slaughtered any colony they encountered. Glass's back wound festers. His body reeks of blood and rot. He tried to minimize the infection by cauterizing his wounds with gunpowder until he passed out. Meanwhile, Glass was very close to the Arikara tribe, their horsemen advancing swiftly. Glass spent the night there, catching fish or anything that would keep him alive. The Araucara discover his trail again. A war party on horseback closes in. Glass runs, limping through the trees. Then, with no choice, he leaps into the rapids. The river thrashes him like a rag doll. He crashes against rocks, sinks, resurfaces, but it carries him away far from the reach of his hunters. The river thrashes him like a rag doll. He crashes against rocks, sinks, resurfaces, but it carries him away far from the reach of his hunters. Glass's spirit to stay alive was very high. He continued to achieve anything to survive. Even from the strong current, he managed to get to the shore and survive. Eventually, battered and barely conscious, Glass is found by a lone native man, not an enemy, but a savior. In the morning, Glass tells of his origins, the story of Grizzy the bear and his murdered son. He's seeking revenge. It turns out the man has a similar story to Glass's. His family was slaughtered, and the man now considers Glass family and allows him to join his colony. The man helps Glass return to Captain Henry's company camp, searching for the man who killed his son, John Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald himself had arrived at Captain Henry's company camp with Bridger. He then told the captain that he had done his job well, burying Glass properly and losing Hawk on the way, while Bridger said nothing. Captain Henry took the money and paid them as agreed. However, Bridger didn't take his share because he realized things weren't as Fitzgerald had said. The Pawnee who helped Glass realized that the wound on Glass's body was very rotten and life-threatening, so he began collecting medicines to prevent it from getting worse. In a very traditional medical procedure, he let nature do its work. He gathered tree trunks, stones, roots, and grass. No supernatural powers, no miracles, completely from nature. He then smoked the unconscious Glass overnight until he awoke, completely recovered. But when he woke up and recovered, a shocking scene unfolded before his eyes. The Pawnee man who had saved his life had been murdered, hanging from a tree. This was unforgivable for Glass. The killers were French colonists who had done their dirty work. They robbed and destroyed the indigenous tribes, then sold the loot to their own country. Glass sneaks in, trying to retrieve his horse, stolen from a murdered Pawnee. However, he witnesses a sexual assault on an Indian girl he doesn't recognize. Glass rescues the Indian woman from the clutches of the evil Frenchman, and then quickly escapes with his horse. That night, the Araucara tribe returned to action, discovering traces of a white colony. Glass, however, was unaware of how close he was to this vastly superior tribe. Until dawn broke, Glass was found again by a tribe that was very skilled at hunting. Glass was surrounded by dozens of people, shot with arrows and shouted at. Glass still escaped on horseback, then pursued relentlessly. Glass rode very fast, straight without direction. He himself did not know where he was riding, until he did not realize in front of him was a ravine, and with no choice, he crossed the ravine. Once again, his fighting spirit was very high. Falling from a cliff higher than a pine tree with his horse, he survived. His horse was destroyed. Suddenly, a brutal storm strikes. Glass guts the horse with trembling hands, then crawls inside the carcass to survive the blizzard. curled up in flesh and bone. He's no longer fully human, just a creature driven by vengeance and a father's love. When the sun finally rises, Glass crawls out of the horse carcass, skin soaked in sweat, blood, and snow. His body's nearly frozen, but his eyes still burn. The look of a man who refuses to die. He rises slowly, staggering steps, but unshaken will. His revenge isn't over. His son hasn't been avenged. And the path ahead is long and lethal. Morning mist cloaks the forest as a lone man stumbles toward the wooden outpost of Captain Henry's camp. Dirty, ragged, pale, and trembling. He looks like someone who just escaped from hell. He's one of the French, the only survivor of an Arikara massacre. During interrogation, he accidentally pulled out a water bottle believed to belong to Glass. He said he found it when a lone American man stole a horse from their colony. This indicated that Glass was still alive. Captain Henry immediately took him and his troops to the designated location. Fitzgerald, of course, immediately panicked. He didn't expect the man to keep chasing him. Driven by determination, Captain Henry rides through the snow-covered forest. He doesn't care about the cold. He doesn't care about the distance. And finally, amidst the white trees and freezing air, he sees a man. Wounded, starving, but burning with one thing: revenge. Glass is alive. Captain Henry rides out. His face is grim. His hands grip the rifle, not for defense, but for vengeance. He can no longer hold back. Fitzgerald stole, lied, deceived, and worst of all, he left a man buried alive just to save his own skin. This is no longer a manhunt. It's a matter of pride, of justice, of restoring a leader's honor. The hunt isn't over. And now, it's not just a father seeking justice, but also a betrayed captain seeking truth. Together, they prepare for the final journey, where justice won't be spoken, it will be delivered. Fitzgerald's trail leads east, through snow, valleys, and dead forests. Henry doesn't care how far, because Glass's pain has become his own.
How close?
The plan is set. Glass and Captain Henry decide to split two different paths to flank Fitzgerald, but Fitzgerald moves first. From a distance, he spots Henry. No hesitation. Bang! A clean shot drops the captain. Glass, hearing the gunshot, runs toward it. He arrives to find Henry dead on the snowy ground. Rage flares, but he stays sharp. In the wake of Captain Henry's death, Glass devises one final trap. He props Henry's lifeless body upright on his own horse, tied to a wooden brace to mimic life. Glass himself lies motionless on Henry's horse, pretending to be a corpse. The two horses move slowly toward Fitzgerald, who's watching from a distance. Fitz fires a shot striking the body of Henry squarely. He approaches with caution. Then suddenly, bang! Glass shoots from behind, revealing himself. The shot hits Fitzgerald in the shoulder, not fatal, but enough to wound him. Fitz screams and flees down the icy ridge. Glass jumps off the horse, determined, driven by revenge. The chase is on, and only one man will survive this frozen hell. Glass chases Fitzgerald across the icy wilderness. No more words, no more mercy. They reach the riverbank. Cornered, nowhere to run, they clash. Blades drawn, punches thrown. Two broken men in a final, primal battle. Glass is wounded again. Fitz fights like an animal, but Glass gains the upper hand. Drives the knife into Fitzgerald's body. Fitz gasps, bleeding, crawling, but Glass doesn't finish him. Instead, he turns his gaze across the river. where the Arikara warriors wait on horseback. He grabs Fitzgerald, drags his bleeding body to the river, still breathing, and lets the current carry him, right toward the Arikara. Arikara approach to Glass. Glass watches, but they do not shoot him. The Arikara let him live, because in their eyes, he's no longer the enemy. He saved what was sacred, among them the chief's daughter, the one Glass unknowingly saved. Now Glass stands alone. Justice has been served, but the grief remains.